Are you looking for an awesome fall dessert? I think I have just what you're looking for. This is my apple cranberry crumble. It's only 3 bites for this serving, and I'm going to show you how to do it coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now, I hope you will pardon the jaw. I'm trying to enunciate as clearly as I can. But it is giving me trouble today. My arms were giving me trouble earlier, now it's the jaw. And for those of you who don't know, I have neuropathy and myopathy, meaning that my muscles and nerves don't always work correctly. So I have issues like this from time to time. But we will plow through and not let it get in our way. So today, what I'm going to do is continue that theme of fall flavors. I was going to do just the apple crumble, which is great. But then I thought, well, let's really ramp up the fallness of it, the autumnal feel of it, and add some cranberries. And in the recipe on my blog, this is listed in the notes as an option. But the recipe itself will be, say, Roy's light apple crumble. And then in there, it'll tell you that you can swap out about a ½ pound of the apples for a 1.5 cups of cranberries. So let's go over the ingredients. Because I am using the cranberries, I only have 2 pounds of apples here. Now I have them in water. You don't have to put them in water. I did this so I could prep for the video. So this is acidulated water, which just means it's got an acid in it. This time what I'm using is some lemon juice, just because if the apples were left out in the air, they would get brown and darken quite a bit, kind of like potatoes. So if you're ever using either apples or potatoes and they have to sit for a little bit, make sure you put them in some water with a little bit of acid so that it'll keep the color. So there are 2 pounds here. The actual recipe, if you're not using the cranberries, would be 2.5 pounds. I did leave 2 of them whole so I can show you how I cube them up if you need to see how that is done. But, so 2 pounds of apples, 1.5 cups of cranberries. In here I have a tablespoon of lemon juice. And in this mix here I have 2 tablespoons of a sugar replacement. I use Swerve. You could use brown sugar or white sugar, or a combination of both. It depends on your tastes, on what you have on hand. So it doesn't have to be the white Swerve that I have in here, the white sweetener. You could use the brown sugar sweetener. There's also a ½ teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, and 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg. Now those are the typical apple pie spice flavors. So we are incorporating them in with the apples. And there's also 1/4 teaspoon of salt in here. Now these right here are the apple components. These over here are the topping. So we have a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of light butter. We have a 1/3 cup of oatmeal. This is old-fashioned oats. The recipe calls for quick oats. Just because they cook better as a topping, they don't have to be in as long. But I don't like buying an extra type of oat just to have it on hand. So I will show you how to turn this old-fashioned oatmeal into quick oats. A little hack. In here we have 2 tablespoons of the sugar replacement. Again, I'm using the white sugar replacement. You could just use the brown sugar replacement if you chose. There's also a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You want to have a little salt in with your sweetness because that will enhance that flavor. That is a seasoning, which means it brings out the flavor of the other things that it is with. Okay, we have 2 tablespoons of chopped nuts. I'm using walnuts. If you use a different type of nut, it may affect the bites or points. So just make sure you are inputting what you use into the recipe builder. And then lastly, for the topping, we have 1 tablespoon of almond milk and a half a teaspoon of vanilla. So we put that in together. Didn't have to be in separate little bowls. So let me clear a few things out. We don't need the topping, and I'll show you how to do the apples. Okay, for the apples, I'm going to show you 2 ways. The way I did it and another way you can do it. I used one of these apple slicers, and it will core the apple as well as slice it into these little wedges, which is very convenient. So I like to use that when I can. So let me just show you. I'm just going to put this hole over the stem area and then kind of wiggle it down a little bit. Okay. Then you kind of just pull them up off of that, and you're done. You got the core out. Now this one has a little bit of the bottom on, a little bit of that core piece, so I'm going to cut that off. Now I have measured, because I cook so often and need to have measurements, or at least a vague idea of a measurement, that my pinky finger up to this first line is 1 inch. So these are to be cut into 1 inch cubes. So what I'm going to do is just check and see how long these are based on that finger. These are about 2 inches, roughly. It doesn't have to be precise. So I'm just going to cut these wedges now in half, so I can have my 1 inch chunks. That's what you're cutting these into, is 1 inch pieces. And this little guy is pretty much there already. And then I'm going to just throw them in here into the acidulated water, just to keep them from browning while I take care of the other one. Now, if you don't have an apple corer, what you can do is, if you saw my tutorial, my Back to Basics tutorial on peppers, we're going to basically do the same thing, cutting off the cheeks, kind of the rounded parts. So we're basically going to go up against the core, slice down, and just turn it 1/4, do the same thing. Now this last piece, trying to hold it this way, could be a little precarious, especially if you're having issues like I am. So I'm going to lay that one down and just cut it that way. So you basically got the core out and no fuss. Now these, about 2 inches as well. So this one, I'm just going to leave like that. This one, I'm going to cut this in half, and then in half again. And I mean, like I said, this doesn't have to be precise. I mean, you want them all close so they cook at the same rate, but don't make yourself crazy. Okay, so this one I'm going to cut into 3/3. This is the first big cheek that I cut off. Okay, so the apples are done. Let me drain them from the water, and I will be back to show you how we get it set up. Okay, so the apples have been drained. I'm going to add in the cranberries. And these were frozen. I let them thaw out here for a while. And I'm just going to toss those through a little bit. Now, like I said, you could do all apple. You could do apple and another berry if you wanted. You could do pears in place of the apples. Another fall type of fruit. Pears and cranberry would be great together. So that is also an option. So cranberries in, we're going to toss them with some lemon juice and toss that around to coat everything. I'm using Gala apples, but any type of baking apple will do. I typically will use Granny Smith. That's typically my favorite because it's a very hearty apple and stands up to baking well. But Honeycrisp and Golden Delicious are also other baking apples which would be good. And you can also look online and see where in your area what the best type of baking apple is. Different regions will have different apples. Okay, so just going to add in the sweetener and the spices and the salt. We're just going to toss to coat so that there's a little bit of the sweetener, the spices, all of that throughout our dish. Now, if you really didn't want to go out of your way and get nutmeg or ginger, if you don't often bake with those things, you could just replace it with some more cinnamon. So you don't have to go out of your way. Now, I have a 9-inch loaf pan that I've sprayed with cooking spray, and it's sitting on top of one of my small little quarter sheet pans, they call it, just in case there's any bubble over. So I'm going to put all of this. Okay, let me put it over here. You can smell it and I can see some juices flowing here. I'm going to put all of this in here. And it's going to look like a lot. But trust me, this will cook down. Once those apples have baked for a little bit, they will have shrunk down into the pan. You can smell all of those delicious fall flavors. Now, this is a 2-part bake. This is the first part because the apples are going to take so long to get to the right tenderness. The topping is going to go on after. We are going to bake these for 30 minutes, but first I am going to cover it with a little bit of foil. And what that will do is that will help the steam stay in there and help cook down those apples and keep a lot of those juices in so that the apples don't dry out before we can get the topping on there. All right, so this is going into a 400-degree oven for 30 minutes. Then we're going to take it out and put the topping on. But in the meantime, while it's in the oven, I'm going to make the topping so that it's ready to go. So I'll do that once I get this in the oven. For the topping, I'm just going to use the same bowl that we mixed the apples in. It'll, for one thing, save us from dirtying another bowl, but it'll also give us any of those juices that are left over after we put the apples into the pan. So the first thing we're going to do is put in our light butter, and we are going to just microwave that for about 15 seconds until it's melted. Not fully, it'll be kind of liquid, a little solid. I'll show you that in 1 second. Okay, so you can see that it's not really liquid, it's kind of half and half. So you just stir that around to spread the heat. You don't want it to overcook in there, and it doesn't have to be fully liquid. Just soft like this is fine. Then we're going to add in the sweetener and the cinnamon and salt. and the vanilla and almond milk. And just stir those together. You don't need to break out the whisk or something like this. We're just kind of hodgepodging it. Okay, so now that that's in there, oh, I gotta show you how to turn these regular oats into the quick oats. So 1 second while I get my little food processor. Okay, so I have my little processor. Now we're just gonna pulse this 3 or 4 times. You could also do this with a knife if you didn't have a little food processor, just chop it up a little bit. But we're just going to do a couple of quick pulses just to get it cut down a little bit. You don't want it to get too fine. I'm going to turn down the volume while I do that so you don't get buzzed out. And you can see it's a little finer than it was. That's exactly what you want, just to cook up a little faster. And now I'm going to dump this in with the wet, so that way it'll help to absorb all of these flavors from the butter and the cinnamon. Okay, now that's in. We're going to add in the nuts. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, 2 tablespoons of nuts, or at least walnuts, is 15 grams. I weighed them out. I didn't try to measure them with a tablespoon because nuts are so wonky. I'm not going to worry about that. So just check on your label. Like mine said a 1/4 cup equaled 30 grams. So a 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. I only needed 2, so I cut that in half. So 15 grams of walnuts. And just toss that. The flour goes in now. And what you're looking for is kind of like a cookie dough. And if it was a little too thick, you could always add a little bit of almond milk. So this looks pretty good. It's like a cookie dough, and that's what you want. We're going to break it up on top of the apples and cranberries once they come out. But we still have about 20 minutes, so I will be back to show you how to put the topping on. Okay, this already smells amazing. Can't wait till I take the foil off. Carefully, because this pan is hot. See? So is the little pan that it's sitting on top of. I guess I tucked it in a little too well. There it goes. All right, so you can see it sunk a little bit, not much, but they've cooked down. Definitely getting a lot of that cranberry smell in there. Okay, I'm just gonna press this down slightly. There is a lot of juice in there from the cooking process. And now we're gonna dump handfuls of our topping, little spots of our topping well on top. And I had the cooking spray out just in case this was a little too sticky. So you're just going to dot this all over the place. You're not looking for full coverage. On a crumble, you don't have like a pie topping. It's not fully covered. It's crumbled on top, hence the name crumble. So just do it as evenly as you can. And I will finish this up and then be right back. Okay, so the crumble is all on there. Now I'm just going to press it down lightly into the apples so that when it bakes, it's going to bake in there a little bit more and not just be sitting on the top. Okay, so this is going back into the oven for 20 to 25 minutes until you touch the crumble and it feels done. It kind of feels solid when you tap on it. And I will show you that once it comes out of the oven. I'll be back. Okay, I've pulled out the apple cranberry crumble, and you can see there's still a little bit of bubbling going on there. And that's what you wanted. You didn't want to cover the pan again once you had the crumble on. Otherwise, that moisture would have made the crumble soft. It wouldn't have allowed for any of the extra liquid to evaporate. We needed that extra liquid at first to help the apples and cranberries cook, but we don't need it now. So we wanted it to steam some of it away, make the rest of it a nice juicy syrup, and now comes the unfortunate part. We must let this sit and cool for an hour. I'm actually going to take it off the sheet pan so that it's directly on the cooling rack and it won't have this extra metal to try to keep it warm. So I'm going to let that sit, and I will be back and give you all of the information about this delicious fall dessert. Okay, so there you have it, a nice, still warm apple cranberry crumble. Now this is perfect for fall, perfect for the holidays coming up, so don't think you have to skimp out on desserts during the holidays. Now this makes 4 servings, and each of those servings is going to be only 3 bites or blue points. I'm on the iTrackBites Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the WW Blue plan. Now I made a variation of the recipe that's on my blog. The one that's on the blog, there is the light apple crumble. There's also a light berry crumble. But since this is the fall season, I obviously went with the apple. And to add even more fall flavors, I added cranberry. Now there is no difference in the bites or points if I made just the apple or if I made the apple cranberry. However, if you make the apple, the calories are going to be 245. For macros, the fat is going to be 5.9 grams. The carbs are going to be 64.6 grams. And the protein is going to be 3 grams. Now, if you make the one I made here in the video, the calories drop down to 216 calories a serving. And the fat drops just 0.1 grams to 5.8 grams. The carbs dropped to 56.5 grams, and the protein stays the same at 3 grams. So whichever one you make, it's a great treat, and it won't really dip into those points, bites, calories, or macros. So I hope you like this recipe, whether you do it with the cranberries or without, or even if you change the apples to pears or peaches. I hope you will give this a try. And you can find this recipe as well as all of my recipes on my blog, and the link is down below in the description box. Oh, so let me show you a portion. Let me take off this. Try to get as even as I can. I'm not going to make myself crazy, but now it is very juicy in there. So you definitely want to spoon it out. Little bit of topping that's hiding on me there. So this would be 1 serving, and with a little fat-free Ready Whip, no extra bites if you just use a little bit. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and you're looking for recipes to help you on a weight loss journey. Hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And share this recipe if you know anyone who's on a weight loss journey who might like something like this. So I hope that you will also follow me over on Instagram. I will leave my handle here, as well as the 2 Facebook groups that I am a part of. One is Recipes with Roy. The other one is Finding Our Way, W-E-I-G-H. And I co-admin that with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing a Life with Bree. So I hope you will join us over there. There's a lot of great things going on. And I hope you will give this a try. It's definitely a fall treat you're not going to want to miss. So until next time, bye.